Ask the Podcast Coach for August 23rd, 2025.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that music that means it's Saturday morning. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com, and joining me right over there is the one and only Jim Coulson from theaverageguy.tv. Jim, how's it going, buddy?
Greetings, Dave. Happy Saturday morning to you. Always good to be with you. Welcome back from Podcast Movement. I'm sure we'll talk about it, but you don't have the movement voice.
I don't usually. Usually it's way down here. Like, welcome to the Ask the Podcast Coach. Yeah, I did. It's more of a Peter Brady thing where, like, I know Wednesday night. It was funny because I'm talking to this lovely woman who's all of maybe 26. And I go, and every other thing was just, and I said, man, it's not even, I got to talk tomorrow, and I've got Peter Brady voice. And I looked at her and I go, you have no idea who Peter Brady is, do you? And she goes, no. I go, Brady Bunch? And she goes, oh, I've heard of that. And I was like, yeah. So that was fun. But yeah, Podcast Movement was fun. We can talk about that. But the one thing they did have there in plenty for $150 a gallon, if you wanted some. Not making that up. Have
it delivered to the booth or like?
No, just they had these stations everywhere, and I forget who was talking to Dan, and they said, yeah, it's $150 a gallon.
Wow,
for that lovely
coffee. Well, yeah, this isn't as expensive.
No, and that coffee pour is brought to you by my good friend Mark over at, if I can get my buttons, there we go, Mark from Podcast Branding. .co, because they're going to see you before they hear you, and Mark is an experienced graphic artist, and he can make artwork. He's made a ton of mine, whether it's Podcast Hot Seat, School of Podcasting, Podcast Rodeo Show. They all look amazing, and he's never ever disappointed me. He's done probably over 500, 600, maybe even 1,000 different podcast artwork, and if you need a whole website, he'll do that too. He's got 30 years in graphic design. He's been podcasting since 2013, which is beautiful because you don't have to explain to him what a podcast is. And the beautiful thing is, you can get cheaper things on Fiverr, but these people are not going to give you the one-on-one kind of sit down with Mark, find out what your brand is, and make sure it matches. So the website again, podcastbranding.co. Go tell him Dave and Jim sent you.
Big thanks to our good friend Dan Lefebvre over there, based on a true story podcast.com this week. Amelia, if you haven't seen that, that's based on the Amelia Earhart and the work that she did. If you haven't checked it out in a while, one of the things Dan does that I really like is he takes, he does movie reviews, right? Based on a true story. That's what it's about. Then he makes custom art that's similar to the movie art, and then makes it look like, he puts the guest name on it and his name on it. It's super cool. If you haven't seen that yet, if you're looking for ideas for your podcast, check it out today, based on a true story at basedonatruestorypodcast.com. And as always, Dan, thanks for the coffee and your sponsorship.
Absolutely. Yeah. Uncle Marv says pork chops and applesauce. All right. So boomers unite. Exactly. Stephanie Graham says, I recommend Podcast Hot Seat. Yeah. You can hear her when I went over and did the review. So very cool. I don't know if somebody's asking about that, where they can, everybody always says, how can, I love the fact that there are two things that always come at Podcast Movement, which is, how do I grow my show? But my content is fine. That's always hand in hand together. The one thing I've never done at Podcast Movement, and it was the highlight almost of the week, and I got to do it this week. If you remember, Cap Show, right? Deidre Shen, I believe is how you pronounce her last name. I always just call her Dee. Has a 3-month-old daughter who is absolutely adorable, and it's weird because I look over and she's half asleep and she's in her little stroller thing, and I'm talking to Deidre and she's like, do you do cuddles? And I go, do I do cuddles? And she just picks up her kid and hands it to me, and I'm like, oh, I love cuddles. And she smelled like a baby, acted like a baby, and in in true female fashion, instantly cried and wanted nothing to do with me. And I'm like, well, that's my
They start
effect on.
pushing back.
Yeah.
They start pushing against you. You're like,
Yeah.
they do not want to be close to you. I love that age.
Yeah. And then the other thing that they're doing is they have, let me see if I can find this. They still have Cap Show, and I put the wrong button. They started something called Thule, and I believe it is Thule.com, but as it is, let me, it's fun. I gotta, The fun thing is my Stream Deck is not working this morning, so switching screens is not as fun as usual. But you should see Thule, Tuulie. And what they've done is, they have Cap Show, which is an all-in-one, and they've basically said, people will use one thing in Cap Show, and then they quit because Cap Show's not the cheapest thing on the planet. And they're like, I'm really just using one thing in it. So they've now taken it and taken AI tools and broken them into like, well, what do you need? Well, I was just using it for image, or I was just using it for transcripts, and so you can kind of a la carte your AI stuff. And I was like, to me, I just thought it was cool because it was a different, what would you call it? Different strategy. They still have, the other one, but I was like, well, that's kind of different. So that was new. I'm trying to think if there was anything. There were many things that we thought were missing, and this is not a podcast movement bash, but no Spotify, no Descript, no iHeart booth. There was an iHeart party. There are a bunch of other like kind of big sponsors that weren't there, and we're like, well, that's kind of different. B&H was there, and I don't remember B&H being at other podcast events, so they had a ginormous booth with tons of gear. So if you wanted to get your gear on, I had a few people are like, they were asking me about the Rode video switcher. They're like, is that good? I go, go talk to Todd, because Todd has one, and I know, as far as I know, he loves it. So, but got to see Daniel's in the chat room. Got to see Daniel a little bit, and got a quick demo of a tool he's coming out with. Daniel, are we allowed to say what it is yet? I know he's been teasing it for quite some time, but that's going to be pretty cool. And yeah, there was Ray says there was no Around the Layout podcast booth. Nope, there was none of that. But I'm trying to think if there was anything new that I'd not
dogs, beer.
There were no dogs.
Just
lots of walking, and lots of talking, and even the iHeart, the party was not quite so because they took us to a place that had these outdoor pickleball courts, and I don't know if you've ever heard of Texas, but it's not the coolest place on the planet.
Not last week either.
Yeah, and so I had a suit jacket on over a t-shirt, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not playing pickleball. And luckily there was a thing on the inside, because nothing tastes better than free iHeart shrimp. I'm here to tell you. I was like, oh, there's food here. I'm like, meow. So, but that was fun. And it was actually a place where you had to talk over the people, because it's weird, because I heard people say that they reported 3,500 people there, and everybody there was like, I don't know, I don't think so, because it's a ginormous hotel. It's like a city unto itself. So unless you've got 10,000 people there, it's going to be looking kind of half full. But when we got them to the iHeart party, you're like, oh, there are a lot of people here, because it was a much smaller venue. So yes, Daniel is working on an app for chapters. I did get to see it, watched a quick demo. And so if your host doesn't do anything with chapters, then this would be a great tool. Or it also, his chapters work for podcasting 2.0 and 1.0, and the fact that they actually inject the chapters into the MP3. So Coach Dave says, my Stream Deck has started acting out too. Wonder if anyone else has a similar experience. Might be an update. Yeah, I rebooted my computer and then checked, and it was like, oh, Stream Deck needs a new update, so I did that, and then none of my buttons worked. And the problem is I added a bunch of new buttons and then did not back up my Stream Deck, because normally you just go, oh, we'll just restore the backup. Well, my backup isn't up to date, so I will probably do that anyway and just redo the new buttons rather than redoing. But yeah, some of it works. I can turn my lights on and off, but anything that chooses a scene, it's like, I don't know what you mean. So I like Ecamm. It's great for live streaming, but there are times when the combo of Stream Deck and Ecamm is kind of what's the word? Frustrating.
No, it's
A
just
little bit.
I have an equation, right? Options equal confusion,
Yeah.
and so learned that from some guys long ago, and it's kind of true. You get what's the open source one? I'm forgetting right now.
Yeah. It's that one.
Why is it? Everybody knows what I'm
Buffering.
talking about, right? I know it's been a long
Um,
week. It'll come to us in a second. Doesn't
yeah.
matter. It's got I know. Isn't that crazy that neither one of us? They'll throw it in the chat room here in just a
Yes.
second. I want to say like Blue Cam or
No, it's
Wizzy Blue. I can't remember that for whatever.
man.
Doesn't matter. The chat room will throw it in here in a second.
Yeah.
But I think the point of that is we sometimes we build software, or this is what happens to software companies that listen to every bit of feedback that they get from their customers, and they create these more and more and more complex systems because they try to be everything for everybody. This is Cap Show, right? And so then they like, what we need is something that's a little bit easier for our users. And then, so they start backing some of those out, or they create a scaled down version, or they do some of those kinds of things. So it's just, you've got to, from that perspective, when you try to be everything for all people in everyone, then you're I don't want to say you're good for no one, because there's folks that figure it out, but it is, in the maturity cycle of software, if you try to be all things, you're absolutely nothing. And a lot of folks, you're like, I don't know and you got to charge for it. So then folks that say to the question, like, is it worth the whatever? OBS. Yeah. Thank you. Rich got it. OBS.
Tell him what he's
I don't
won.
know why.
Yeah.
I don't know why I couldn't remember that. But so anyways, I think, Dave, we got to be, this is I think, back to your podcast movement, I think we're in the trough of disillusionment for most podcasters. There's a whole bunch there's a few that are doing really, really well. That's great. But most of the podcasters, they're just doing okay, right? In the Gartner hype cycle, right, there's this on the backside of this peak, and we probably peaked a couple years ago. There's this trough of disillusionment where people struggle. They ask questions like, is podcast movement worth it? Should I, this is why Spotify wasn't there. They've got good marketing folks that are like, yeah, we're at the bottom of the cycle. Doesn't mean, it almost never means that in the bottom, in the trough, the thing goes away. Sometimes it does, but in the trough, there's lots of questions being asked. And I actually think this is the best opportunity for independent podcasters right now to think, how do I retool for the future? Like, if you are ever thinking about, I want to stay around, but I need to do something, right now is the time to try a whole bunch of things, or to figure some things out, or to double down, because everybody else is getting out. They're like, whatever. In business, and I think in podcasting, you got to be counter to what the culture is doing. So when everybody's getting out, you got to be getting in. Because and it's frustrating because you're like, nobody's here anymore. Yeah, that's actually a great opportunity. As people are leaving the door, you should be the one staying, saying, yeah, I'm going to double down on this thing. Because I remember, a couple years ago, Bitcoin backed its way up and everybody's like, oh, this is over. Well, it's not over now. Right. And a lot of people jumped off the train back when it was 30,000, it's 120 now. And I think podcast has these cycles. Friends, I want to tell you, like, don't be discouraged. I've been reading some real negativity coming out of podcast movement from podcasters. Oh, nobody was there. It was too big, vendor halls, blah, blah, blah. I think this is the green light for independent podcasters to say, okay, we're at the bottom. What do we do now? How do we retool? How do we start reaching people? How do we do things? I think now is the time to start. If you're ready to go on this, now is the time to double down and say, okay, what's the next version of this look like? Whether that's podcasting 2.0 or whatever we're doing. If you're in, double down. Now's not the time. You're welcome to get out. But if you want to stay in, don't be frustrated with it. Figure out where we're going with this thing. Figure out what the next thing is for you, and then do it. Double down as you do it. Do we have a guest, Dave?
We do have a guest. The one and only Marty. I'm going to guess Sobo, S-O-B-O. And and so Steph and everybody else talking about podcast movement. We'll get to that in a second. I want to hear what Marty has to say. So in theory, I have assigned him to, okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Great. Excellent. How are you?
I am good. Thank you. How are you? First time here, but it's I love your show and what you do. And so I wanted to check this out and see what you guys were all about with the live show on Saturdays.
Yeah. So do you have a podcast?
I do, actually. I'm actually blind. I lost my vision 10 years ago, and we specialize in technology for people who are low vision and blind community. So that's where we're at.
Oh, there we go. Excellent. Well, do you have any questions? That's basically what we do is we kind of talk about what's going on. And then when somebody has a question, you can come on in or Stephanie added one in the chat room. And I've got 20 years in podcasting. Jim, you've got 18, 15?
No, 15 probably.
15? Okay.
I've been out there kind of searching around, looking to see what's out there. And you were very intriguing, Dave, because we grew up listening to very much the same kind of music. I'm very into music. And so that was kind of the thing for me to go, oh, let me start listening to your stuff. And so I did. And what you guys do is great. I really enjoyed a lot.
Excellent. But yeah, that's we've been doing this over 10 years now.
And something like that.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. I mean, you're in a niche, right? With your podcasting. What kind of, when you think about what works best for you in the community that you serve and that you work with, what's working best for you in your niche as far as podcasting goes?
I would say the first thing is that I love podcasting, and I do not look at podcasting as a way to depend on making money. A lot of people who have lost their vision, I help with their technology, like, for example, using their iPhone, for example. They don't know what the accessibility features are, like voiceover, Zoom, and stuff like that. And a lot of people aren't even techie, and they now have to live with a slab of glass that they have no real interest in, and they're not techie people. So it's getting over that little bit of emotion that they've lost their vision, and they're going through that whole thing while also having to do something they have no interest in. But once they realize that they have someone that they can relate to, like for myself, I lost my vision, and I'm now helping them, then they come down a few notches and they're able to sort of saturate what they're doing. And I don't charge really anybody any money to help them out and stuff like that. I try to just pay it forward.
What kind of tools do you use? Obviously, you're going to have to use some, tools for vision that you can't see. What are you using that's helping you make all this stuff work? This is an area at work we get asked all the time about, tools to help people. We have people take an assessment, and of course, it's got to read to them. So what kind of tools do you use that helps you out?
So I'm all a Mac person. So everything that Mac does, they build in the accessibility feature. So I use what's called VoiceOver, which is across the Mac platform as well as the iOS platform. And you turn that on. And once you turn that on and you adjust it to whatever your needs are, for example, how fast it talks, things like that, then it reads to you everything on the screen. So, like mail, it'll say mail, and then you can click that and open it. Or you can say messages, it'll click that and open it. So that's pretty cool. Once you get into the third party kind of situation, it starts to get a little sketchy because not everybody develops for the accessibility features. It took me a while to sort of figure out what I was going to do and how I was going to do it with like all the podcasting stuff that I do. So ultimately, if you're someone who's new getting into podcasting, I would probably recommend like an Audio Technica ATR 2100X because that has XLR and USB-C.
Yep.
And so you don't need an interface. You can plug it directly into your computer and it's really easy. You just kind of go for it. But if you, like for my setup, I have an interface that's all analog so that I don't need to worry about the inaccessible software. So
Yeah.
Very cool.
I can control everything.
What kind of feedback do you get from your audience? Like, what's your audience size, do you think, and what kind of feedback do you get from them?
We don't have a huge giant audience, but on our average, we get about 300 to 400 downloads every few days, something like that. So it's not huge, but we're very nichey. I mean, what am I gonna,
Yeah, it doesn't need to be huge. You just kind of confirmed a point I was making before you came on, is that I think we're in a space where it's the hyper niche is gonna be the place to be for most podcasters.
Yeah.
And you're in that now. I mean, you're serving a community. It's not a giant community to begin with, but there are people who have those needs, right? They need to be able to
absolutely
hear from you and be supported by you and be encouraged by you. And I want us to stop. I think we need to stop thinking that huge is the goal. I actually think engagement is the goal. And I bet you have really good engagement with the folks that are listening, right? Are you getting some feedback? Are you able to have conversations kind of beyond the podcast where you have some individual conversations with them? And are you getting that kind of engagement?
Yeah, absolutely. We're not currently doing it right now, but we used to do a live show similar to this, of what you guys are doing right now. And we would have people come in and they would ask their tech questions, and all of them were mostly basic stuff, but with accessibility. How do I handle this situation, or this broke? How do I fix that? Or what app is going to do this or solve that problem? So we used to do that an hour a week, and that's,
Well, we have a question right now from Coach Dave. He says, I want to know how Marty can take or keep notes when you're doing your research and assembling, kind of the episodes. What tools are you using for that kind of stuff?
Well, so I use a lot of dictation, obviously, because it's much faster, but obviously you can type as well. People love mechanical keyboards and things like that, but, you don't want that to be heard in the background. And as I save stuff, there's some good tools out there that are really good. There's one called, oh my gosh, what's it called? It's a links program. It's like a read it later program, and it's called Good Links, actually, is what it's called. And the reason why I like that app so much is because it does have a cost to it, not much, a couple dollars a month, but it works on all my platforms. So phone, Mac computer, as well as iPad. And when I save information to it, it strips out everything so that I'm not dealing with pop-ups and everything else. It just gives me straight the content, and it works great with voiceover. So a lot of times I'll go to a website, and the website has all kinds of pop-ups and this and that and the other, and you're pretty much dead in the water, So
yeah. So you need to block those in a lot of cases, right? Just for usability, so you don't have things showing up on your screen.
I mean, there's a lot of
trying to read those.
There's a lot of Safari plugins that block pop-ups and things like that, but they always seem to break or be problematic. So I decided to just kind of get an app that does it for you and do it that way. So if there's something that's really intriguing, then I will save it and throw it in there and go back and read it without any hassle. It just is the text, and it's really straightforward. I guess the other thing I do is also use an RSS reader as well.
Yeah,
it's good stuff. Marty, do you find folks with sight listen to you as well, who maybe work with those that don't? Is that sometimes we think, well, it's that niche that maybe it would only be those who've lost their sight, but you have folks that still have it listening to your podcast.
Yeah. And I say that at the end of the day, all the information works for anybody, really. So, say like you're not sure how to do something. It works the same, but if you add the voiceover to it, it's just walking somebody through how to do it with the voiceover turned on. But once somebody learns how to use voiceover, it kind of is the same information. Once somebody knows voiceover, I don't need to say, do a 2-finger swipe to here and then double click that and click in here. Once you've learned voiceover, you don't need to keep explaining it with voiceover. You can do the same. Like if you're finding, say, you want to turn up your screen brightness, right? You would still go into settings, go into screen brightness, turn up your screen brightness to whatever you are happy with or whatever works for you. If you're talking to someone that needs to use an accessibility feature like voiceover, you just add in the beginning, go to settings, double click that, and you add those swipes and clicks for voiceover. But once you know it, you don't need to keep saying it. That's just how you kind of use your device once you know it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Last question for me, Dave, and then we'll let him go.
Yeah.
But Marty, is AI being helpful to you at all in the last year as it's gotten, is it a help for you?
Absolutely. I'm a Chat GPT user, and I would say that I write my own stuff, but it's definitely great for some research. It's kind of spices up your, research some of the time. If you want to just put a little bit of polish on something, then those are kind of the things that I use it for.
Cool.
Very cool. Well, hey, man, thanks for stopping by. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's awesome to hear you guys, and I'm a fan, so I'll be hanging around.
All right.
Yeah, thanks for jumping in.
We'll see you.
Yeah. Yep.
Bye. That's very cool. Meanwhile, the chat room had a bunch of questions. And so, oh, crap. We forgot to ask Marty what his website was.
That's we did. We're bad hosts. Sorry.
Sorry,
Marty, if you can throw it in chat, if you can in our YouTube chat,
or the name of the show.
Yeah, put the name in there. That'd be great.
Wait, hold on. Is he still? Can I add him back? If I go here, add to placeholder. He's still here, I think. Marty, can you hear us, or can we hear you? Because I removed him from the cameras. I've added him back. He might be muted. All right. Well, never mind. Remove from cameras. Okay. The question we have from Stephanie is, what do you think about Captivate getting into the editing game? Well, they're getting into the recording game, and Riverside getting into hosting, which I thought it was interesting. James he was walking around the floor talking to people, thinking he was using his handheld little microphone, and he was using the built-in laptop microphone. And Buzzsprout has, what's the thing that cleans up everything? Auphonic built into it. They call it Magic Mastering. It actually didn't sound that bad. So kudos to Auphonic. For me, number one, if I'm going to get into anything, I don't know that I would get into recording. I need to double check. I know Libsyn did have Libsyn Connect for a while, but I haven't heard them talk about it in a very long time. And I'm like, did they undo that? Because it's one thing to help edit the recording. It's another thing to get the recording. And if you mess that up, like it's like a wedding photographer. You can't go, hey, everybody, can we go back inside and pretend that they're not married? Like that would be, so that's my only worry. I'm like, because I know when I was at Libsyn and they added Libsyn Connect, I was like, oh, as a support person, I'm like, please never, ever, ever have a mistake. Because, somebody interviews the biggest person in their space, and then that's the one that, so kudos for them for having the courage to do that. Riverside into hosting, I did email them and said, hey, like, can you shed some light on that? Like, are you going to be IAB certified? Are you going to have dynamic content? Are you, there's also, like, the other one is, like, we've seen people like Kajabi, when they first jumped into being a podcast host, that they didn't have a 301 redirect. So if you moved over there and they were awful, you couldn't move back. And now they have since fixed that. But I was just like, oh, here's another company kind of jumping into hosting. But Riverside got a boat ton of money, VC money, and they've been adding new features ever since. So I'm like, I I know, I mean, Steven knows me. I know him. I like, oh, look, it's the guy from the Riverside videos. So I talked to them a little bit, and James was talking to them and asked them about the hosting, and they're like, yeah, we just announced it at this point. Details are coming. So I know it works because there are people on Podpage that put in the feed from Riverside. So, not a lot of details on that. But my thing is, I'm kind of like Dan. He says he's not a big fan of all-in-one software. It ends up being able to do everything and not be great at a ton of it. And that's my whole thought. I'm like, So I know Captivate is getting into the advertising game where you'll be able to get those awesome, 0.005 cent ads per download, the $5 CPM. Those are coming your way in Captivate, which will be, in a way, Captivate. You'll be able to record your episode. You'll be able to do your own dynamic stuff and get dynamic ads if you want them. I think that was the things they announced. So we shall see. But I just, to me, I guess I've always wondered if some podcasters feel having ads validates their show. Like, I'm a real podcaster now because I got ads. And I'm like, yeah, but I made $3.47 last month on Red Circle on a show that is dead. So, but nonetheless, I paid them $9 to get $3.47. So, if I added a new episode, that might be different because that's just my back catalog. But that's where when I say it's $5 CPM, it's because I did the math. It's $5 CPM. So, I'm excited that there's new things that just, I remember the days of when you would we still say, hey, roll up your window. And you don't really roll anymore. You push a button up your window. And to me, the more you add, the more you can break. As a guy that's worked for software companies, I know that when you add stuff, you break stuff as well. So I'll be interested to see. I did hear that they're merging. Randy Blackass, thoughts on the podcast movement sounds profitable merger. So I saw Brian Barletta, who I've known for years, and I said, Brian, look, man, you are the ad guy. I go, when I look at you, you're one of those. I go, you live and breathe in the advertising space. And I go, my knee-jerk reaction is next year it's just going to be ads, and more ads. And, oh, here's another presentation about ads. And he's like, no. He goes, we are all about the creator. He goes, now, if that creator wants to make money from ads, absolutely, I can help them with that. And I'd help a lot of people with that. He's like, but we're all about the creator. And I was like, okay. And then I heard, that, hey, they're not going to be at the Gaylord, which I was like, hallelujah. When the discounted rate is $249, you're passively aggressively telling independent podcasters, we don't want you, because nobody can afford that crap. Everybody I talked to that I knew there was not staying at the Gaylord. They're like $250 a night. No, thank you. And so John Jamango says, podcast movement is in NYC next year. I might attend. But the thing that got me, I heard the phrase, hey, they're not going to be at the Gaylord. I was like, yes, now we're going to move someplace affordable. And then they said New York City. And I'm like, not top of my list when I hear the phrase affordable. But I will say the people I met in the podcast movement that didn't have a show, that were like, yeah, I'm thinking of starting one, were all from Dallas. They were all local people. Everybody that was I've known for, or people that come up to the booth, they've been podcasting for a couple of years. So, Dan says, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead, finish it.
Dan says he much rather prefer software that's great at what it does in the overall production pipeline. Yeah, I'm with Dan. I would rather have the software for making chapters and the software for, like, I hear that, like, Descript has studio sound. Pretty amazing tool for cleaning things up. I haven't played with Riverside's tool, but like if that's not as good as studio sound, you're going to end up going, well, I use Riverside because, like, I will say it's impressive. I've been interviewed and I've been, on Riverside as a guest. And when it gets done, it's like, oh, here's a clip you can share now. And I'm like, wait, I just literally, now usually what happens is the interview's over and they hit stop. And so the files have uploaded, but the minute the files are uploaded, that thing's making clips. And it's like, hey, you just, your interview is over. If you want to share that you were on the show, and I was like, well, this is going to be crap. And I hit play and I was like, that's actually a really good clip. So it's going to be interesting to see. But I'm of the Dan persuasion. I don't have a problem going, like, I will take something from, what am I using now? Squadcast. I'll take that if it's an interview, run it through resound.fm, I think it is. I forget the name of it. But it will do a much better job. I have a little more control over removing ums. I know Descript does that, but I love the fact that I can hear the say yes, get rid of it, and then listen to the edit like that. And so I'll blow through a 40-minute thing that used to take me an hour and a half in about 20 minutes, if not less than that. So, but that's what that feature does. It removes ums and lets you hear them, and does Descript do that? Sure. Does Riverside do that? Yeah, but I like that tool. And when it's done, I export it. So yeah, I do have to wait for it to export the new version of it, and go from there. Jim, yeah, I cut you off.
Yeah, going back to the podcast movement, I feel sorry for those guys that organize that. You were talking about New York City. And if you don't pick a decent location,
Right.
then there's half the people are like, well, I'm not going to go. Like, hey, a podcast movement, Oklahoma City, or podcast movement, Omaha. Both cities, large, host great, have facilities that could handle. And in fact, Omaha would be a great place to have podcast movement. We have a facility that would fit that perfectly. 3,500 would feel right. It'd be like, man, this thing is right. But then the other half of the audience goes, well, I don't want to go to Omaha. Like, why would I go to Omaha? That's like, I don't want to go there. So we're such hypocrites on these events. We're like, oh, they're so expensive. And so they go to a destination, they go to Orlando, and then everybody's like, it's so expensive here.
Right.
They can't, I feel sorry for those guys. They can't win. They went to an affordable place. They get laughed out of the, if they announced Podcast Movement Omaha, even though we host, NCAA tournaments, we host the swimming.
Hello, Cleveland,
Cleveland. Yeah, Cleveland. No, right on. We're better than Cleveland. But just saying. I'm just saying.
It's probably true. Yes.
But so friends, I guess I'm going to just speak to the greater podcasting community. Don't like we've got it. If we want it to be more affordable and more accessible or more those kinds of things, we got to give them that feedback. And then when they do that, Dallas is not New York, so it's a little, but it's not the cheapest place in the world. You can go 8 hours north into Oklahoma City and get a lot better rates. But then people are like, so when you have folks that do this and they host them in affordable cities, if that's your gig, affordability is your gig, go. You have to go. You have to support them for those kinds of decisions. Otherwise, we're going to end up in New York or LA or whatever, and you're like, oh my gosh. So, anyways, I felt like that's my my PSA for the morning. Let's not be hypocrites on this thing. If you're gonna do that with price, when they do it, you got to go. Dave, you don't have any choice. That's your job. You have to go. So you don't get choices.
Well, and if you want affordable, empoweredpodcasting.com, the Empowered Podcasting Conference, happening next month, September 26th through the 28th at the lovely Charlotte, North Carolina, where I'll be speaking. And looking forward to that. And my buddy Marty is back. Marty, if you could unmute yourself, I will add you. I will add
Sorry,
you.
we didn't ask you. We really want to know where we can find your podcast. Folks were asking.
Yeah, I got it. Let me see if I can.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Great. Excellent. Where can we find your podcast?
You can go to unmute.show and you'll find everything there. It's under the Unmute Podcast Network.
Oh, there we go.
Unmute.show. Why unmute? What's the story behind that?
The story behind that is in 2000 when the world was changing and everybody was trying to figure out how to use Zoom and all of those
Mm.
tools. It was kind of a joke. Everyone was trying to figure out how you unmute yourself. How do you unmute yourself? And it turned into a joke. And then one night I woke up in the middle of the night and I went, oh, wow, unmute is how do you unmute yourself? Ask your question, advocate for yourself, get your voice heard, be out there, be heard. That's kind of where that came from.
Love it. No, I
Excellent.
love it. That's awesome. Sorry we missed you on getting that.
No.
Yeah.
No problem. I do actually have a question since you're talking about the podcast conferences. Two questions. Question number one is there one on the West Coast? Because I'm actually on the West Coast and everyone seems to be on the other side of the country. And two, like you were saying, to make them more affordable or more accessible to more people, they should offer a ticket price that can be virtual as well, so that if you can't afford to fly to hotels and do all those things, you can still get the information virtually through Zoom or whatever tool.
Well, that's the good news is Podcast Movement, the new president, Brian Barletta of Sounds Profitable, because Sounds Profitable and Podcast Movement have merged. And so Dan is still running Podcast Movement, and Brian is now the president of and that's where he kind of explained it. If you go to soundsprofitable.com, there are a couple articles about it. But Brian was like, hey, first of all, he said every session is now recorded audio and video, and as soon as they're done edited, they're going to be on YouTube. He's like, I do not want to put any friction on a growing industry that needs people to be educated. Like he's like, as soon as they're ready, they're going to be out. And they typically used to be East Coast, Chicago, West Coast, Chicago, East Coast. And what we don't know is we know next year they went to New York City because they were supposed to go to San Diego next year.
Oh, yeah.
And they went to New York City. And what we're all kind of wondering is it going to stay in New York City? Like Podfest is almost always in Tampa or Orlando. It's always in Florida. So, because I heard somebody say something like it's moving to New York City, and I'm like, okay, they didn't say next year. They made it sound like it was a permanent home. I hope that's not the case, but we'll see. But yeah, it does move, and the thing that makes these events so like, why don't we have more of them? Is they were giving away tickets towards the end because you buy a giant block of hotel rooms, and when you're at the Gaylord, that's $250 a night, and if somebody doesn't buy that, you are on the hook, because somebody said they were giving away packages for $1,000, and that included the hotel. Well, that really is just the hotel, and then you're getting a free ticket. Because
I'm sure they charge crazy amount of money for food and everything else.
Yeah, it was it was $250 was the discounted rate for the hotel, and it was basically I was there 3 days. If I'd come the first day, that would have been $4. So yeah, that would have been $1,000. So, and the Gaylord's neat and flashing lights and but I'd have to go back and look and see what the burger that I ate. Usually a burger's $20. So
Marty, what part of the country are you in? Where
California,
exactly,
Southern California.
Yeah, no, oh, perfect. Yeah, and you would think. I mean, they've been out there before. As I look ahead, I don't see any. I think this is, as I was talking earlier. I think again, the industry is changing, and we're in this trough of disillusionment at the moment, and the big folks are paring back, right? And the economy is in weird shape, right here, especially here in the U.S. I think this is an opportunity for someone like you, not saying you should do this. I'm just saying someone like you to organize smaller, local, more personal, like especially if you're in Southern California, like you got a gajillion people there you have access to say, oh, yeah, hey, let's do a meetup or let's do a weekend event somewhere, or find someone who has space where you can get 50 people together or whatever, right? Where that might work. With those kinds of things, I think we got to get small again. And
what about just having a total virtual one? That would be awesome.
Sure. Yeah, no, for sure. You could organize. You could get some folks together. You could, have your site sponsor the thing, put some things together, throw it out there. I think people are hungry for those kinds of things, And if you can make it reasonable and do some things around it. I just think the space is open for disruption there, and I think we can get small again. We were small when things started, and then there were all these startups. I remember when podcast movement first came out, it was such a big deal. Like,
Well,
oh, we're all going to get together, but all those things had started small. And I
yeah.
think there's a chance
Mhm.
to do that again.
Steve Stewart had video from the first one, the very first podcast movement.
Yeah.
And it was cool because I totally forgot it was on a weekend. The whole thing was on a weekend. It was in a smaller, something like a Hampton Inn or, one of those kind of venues. So, it's on the weekend. So if you work, you don't have to take a vacation day, or maybe you take Friday. So there was that. It was really geared towards, creators, because the big industry hadn't come in yet. And now it's like, yeah, we got to have a big hotel. Otherwise, Spotify won't show up and ignore us. So it's like, but if you like the Empowered Podcasting Conference, the tickets are $230. And then if I book my stay, let's see if I go here.
Is this the one you're talking about next month?
Yeah, I'm trying to see what the room rate is.
Do they have a virtual component as well?
I don't know. Virtual, this is the other thing. When you add cameras and audio and live streaming from a hotel that has hotel Wi-Fi, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, forget it.
Yeah, it's the rooms are around $200 for the Hyatt centric one. So I would say
we did. Go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
Well, you're going to sneeze $1,000 away. If it's a couple days, by the time you get a flight, pay for your luggage, buy your ticket, and then have a couple nights at a hotel, you're looking at $1,000. But like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get a sponsor out of my trip there. I've met my, I have people I might interview, and it's fun. That's the other thing. They are a lot of fun. It ruins your voice and you get no sleep. And so far, I'm not sick, so that's the one thing I've missed.
You didn't get the podcast movement
Flu. Yeah.
We listen at the beginning of the pandemic. We had done at Gallup. We had done events only in person for 3 or 4 or 5 years up to it, and then when the pandemic hit, we did 100% virtual for 3 years. And then we brought an in-person event back and added a virtual ticket to it. And what we learned through the process is, you got to keep that virtual ticket. The expectations for people coming virtually, they're not paying more than $100 in most cases, right? It's just not going to happen. So you got to sell a ton of those to recoup, Dave, like you were saying, the cost of, and then the expectations are super high on the content and the production of those virtual rooms that we were doing.
Right.
To make that back up. Then if it's going to be 100% virtual and you're just going to do it on Zoom, the price starts to drop pretty quick on what people will pay if it's Zoom only. Again, it's just expectations of people in what they'll pay. Anything over $50 and people are like, I don't know. It's just a Zoom call. Like I could get this. I could watch a YouTube video. So there's on the back side of this, there are also, listener or audience expectations on price, and then pulling these things together. The dollars and cents of it, are tough. Marty, I think user group concepts where you create a community, so to speak, and then that community gets together, that lowers the expectation. You can probably charge a little bit, and it's because it's not going to be as costly.
Yeah.
So I think there's some options there.
Somebody told me there was a GitHub meetup, like all things GitHub meetup, and they said they did it differently, where they picked a big venue for the convention center or whatever, and then they didn't buy hotels. It was like BYOH, like you want an Airbnb. Now you're gonna miss out kind of on that community, because Wednesday night the bar was hopping, like just lots of people had some really interesting, shall we say. Nothing more fun than having a woman just spew hatred for men with twigs and berries. Like she was like, and then they have 3 men on the stage. I don't want to learn from a man. And I'm like, hello, I am standing right here. But I think that was the bottle of wine talking. I thought that was interesting. Yeah. Another thing I didn't even think about, Stephanie said politically, a lot of people don't mess with Texas. You know what I mean? You're like,
Oh,
I didn't even think about that. When you start going into states that are really red or really blue, which is sad in a way, because like you're inside a hotel. Trust me, we're not talking politics. If we're smart, we're not talking politics. But
Yeah, I did go to CSUN, which was a tech conference for accessibility in March, and it's always in Anaheim at like those Disneyland hotels over there. There's a whole big group of them. And yeah, nobody's talking politics. Everyone's into talking technology, but it's insanely huge and expensive, though.
Yeah, for sure. How much is a ticket for that?
No, they start at I think $500 or $600.
yeah.
And then you got to buy rooms, and the hotel's super nice, so the rooms are not cheap. They're really expensive. And of course, one of the nights we went and tried to get away just to grab something to eat, and we went down to the hotel restaurant, and it cost us $90 for 2 burgers and fries and a drink. Like, you know, it was insane.
Yeah.
It was like the most expensive burger I ever had in my life, I think.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's crazy. Hey, regular prices are that way now. These
Yeah.
days. I took my wife and daughter out last night for wings, and we spent $80. You know, and you're like, wings? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
These things used to be.
There's no more. There's no more
so
99-cent menu at McDonald's or Taco Bell anymore. That's long gone.
That's it.
Those days
So.
have changed. Those days. Well, Marty, thanks for coming back in, and thanks for chatting with us this morning. Appreciate it.
Yeah, this is great. Thanks, you guys. Have a great one.
Yeah, appreciate you coming in. You bet. Thank you.
We'll see you. Yeah, Randy says podcast movement flagship event will be held in New York City for the first time in September of 2026, while its podcast movement evolutions will continue with South by Southwest. Because, you know, when I think affordability, I think Austin, Texas at, you know, but on the other
None
hand,
of them are cheap, Dave. No,
that's
are
it.
Cheap.
Yeah. So
no cities are cheap. Yeah.
that's where, you know, and that's, you know, it's you know, the flip side of that is, there are a lot of people there. So, you know, those who want to go will go. But you know, for me, I've never been a huge fan of evolutions because I'm not the target audience for that.
Right.
You know, so it's, Uncle Marv says only the Podfest Pod Tour is going around the country. Chris is not considered moving the actual. Yeah, he does do a lot of that. I know they just did VidFest in Atlanta yesterday or Friday, and I couldn't go to that because I was still at Podcast Movement. But you know, what are you going to do? Let's see what else the chat room is saying here. Dave, don't you do some smaller podcast shows? I love smaller podcast shows. Yeah. So when I saw Empowered Podcasting, I was like, ooh, this smells, if I get a whiff of that smells like early Podfest. And the life of a show is, I remember the very first Podfest. We, including the vendors, were all in one room. It was single track, maybe 100 people. And we went, this was amazing. And then next year, we're like, we got to make it bigger. And then the vendors moved out because we needed those room for chairs. And then it got bigger. And then it got bigger. And it was like, hey, it's getting really, we got 1,000 people now. We gotta keep the smallness of it. And it got bigger and it got bigger. And I remember a couple years ago when we were at this really nice hotel for Podfest. And the guy's like, I'm paying for a resort fee. And I never saw the resort. Because that's the thing. You know, the only thing the podcaster is going to use, unless they brought their family, is the bed. Like, I really don't need a fancy room. I need Wi-Fi and a bed, and preferably a hamburger that's not going to cost me, you know, me to remortgage my house. Daniel says, I'm happy to report he also did not catch a cold this year. So, you know, and then Stephanie says she's more liking the Omaha podcast movement. Yeah, but
I'm thinking of starting one now. Not really.
Yeah.
No, I might, but I'm not gonna.
Yeah,
it's possible, but I'm not gonna do it.
Well, Daniel brings up a point. If PM continued to be smaller, that it was like this week, they could easily fit in a lot of places. That's the problem. You run into, okay, now we've got 4,000 people. I remember it was almost 5,000 people, and there were a couple things I remember about that. One was I saw Glenn at the beginning as we passed each other in the hallway. And we're like, hey, I'll have to catch you up later. We're like, yeah. And I never saw him again. It was just, there were so many people there. So that is the advantage of being smaller. Then you don't need a hotel that can, you know, seat 5,000 people and that whole. You just need a little baby Holiday Inn, And Randy says maybe Peyton Manning can get involved in advertising a podcast event, so he can scream Omaha.
Omaha. He
Yeah.
used to say.
Tim brings up Podmatch does quarterly virtual events that are pretty good. Yeah, that's true. I did get to hang out with Alex a little bit and Alicia from Podmatch. Do they have events that aren't centered around alcohol? That's a rough order, unfortunately, but they should.
Well, I wouldn't say podcast movement's ordered or centered on alcohol, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's the evening events, right, where people get together and do those kinds of things. I don't think they become centered around them, but
yeah. The thing, it's a thing that, okay, sessions are over. We all go back to our rooms for 20 minutes to check voicemail. And then we all just go it's just a thing. It's like, where's the bar? Because that's where everybody goes. Not because we're dying to go get hammered, but it's like, it's usually the central location with lots of chairs that you can sit down. Dan says virtual conferences can be very quickly they can become just live streams or webinar type events. So that can reduce the perceived value. Yeah, to me, you can't reproduce the hallway very well at a virtual event. They try, I'll give them credit, but it's hard to create that thing. And it's that's to me one of the best parts of these things. It's the hallway. And part of that is they're not being recorded. You think about it, like, I can talk to you in the hallway.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Daniel says the iHeart party had free drinks, but it was a pickleball place. Yeah, I got a Coke there, Coke and water because my voice was toast. Yeah. They're saying yes. The days of the 25-cent wing is no longer, and everything that's on the dollar menu is $2.49. Yeah, I noticed.
I got 6 wings last night, $12. They're $2 a wing
for a wing.
Dude, for a wing. They were pretty good. Let's just be clear. They're the best. Some of the best wings in Omaha, but
where was this at?
This is funny. It's at a restaurant called Sicky's. It may be the worst chosen name for a restaurant. Sicky's. It's a like a garage, like a garage theme restaurant, right? Race cars and sports and some of those kinds of things. But the food is really good there. But $2 a wing.
Yeah, yeah. Tim Bryan says the Holiday Inn at MapCon was great, and John chimes in. Yeah, I love the Joe Pardo 2-day weekend conference in New Jersey, and it was great. The only thing that happened with that one is Joe didn't want to do it. I think the last 2 years, and it showed. The last one especially was like there were only like 20 people there. It was more of a meetup, and it just. Joe's kids are older. He didn't really promote it. Like if you want to have people at your event, you have to promote like 6-9 months in advance, if not a year. Usually, like they did at Podcast Movement, they're like, hey, next year is here. And a lot of times they'll give you a big discount because the other thing is if you're running an event, people are going to buy their tickets the last week. I don't know why that is, but there are a couple people. Harry Duran was there. And he had bought his ticket like last week. There are a lot of people that weren't going to go, and then fear of missing out kicks in, and they go, yeah, okay, I'm going. Daniel says, you're tempting me to host a conference in Cincinnati. I better go lie down and let the feeling. Daniel did a phenomenal, well, number one, it's Daniel J. Lewis. He doesn't make crap. And so, but it almost killed him. I remember he had like no sleep. And he partnered with some local university, Mr. Jive says, so pay $1,000 to travel to the middle of nowhere or $3,000 to attend in a major city. The point is $1,000 is still about $800 more than most people want to spend. Yeah, we're talking about podcasters. Most of us don't even want to pay $1 for hosting. That is true, and that's the problem. And maybe, you need a lot of Spreaker had a booth. That's true. I always forget Spreaker's owned by iHeart. So thanks for that. And then Dollar Tree, of according to Randy Black, is now charging $1.75 for things. Yeah. Liars.
It's going to have to be $2 Tree here in a few. They'll have to change their names. We're now $2 Tree.
Yeah. Daniel says, I'm suddenly feeling serious about having something in Cincinnati. Yeah. I would go.
Listen, I think you can. I don't think don't start them as a conference. Like, do a meetup in your area. Like, go to the local junior college or community college and say, hey, do you have a community space that we can use? Many of them do, right? You have a community space. I'd love to partner with you. I'm going to bring 50 people in. I just made that number up. Whatever works for you.
Yeah, it's hard.
I'm going to bring 50 people in and just get together, like do a half day of 2 topics. A couple speakers, find some people to do some stuff. Just come in, don't charge anything. Maybe charge $5 just so you get some incentive to do it and see what you get. Right? See if there's an appetite for some folks to help. See if there's start small. Just do a podcast meetup in your area and see if it works. Again, I think it's time for us to get our small game on again and start thinking about what does it mean to get local and what does it mean to start, because it is expensive to fly over the country. It is expensive to do some of these kinds of things. You can, charge $15 and get Chipotle to cater, it's something like that. Right. So you may, I think this is a time. I got a website in mind. After the show, I'm going to pitch an idea to you. That I've got an idea for this. So after the show, I don't want to say it because I don't want anybody to buy my domain. But I got an idea.
And you're going to say it to me? Really?
Yeah.
Because if anybody's going to buy the domain, I probably already have it. Yeah.
Well, no, I checked it. It's available.
Okay. Meetups are not even easy. I did a meetup in Cleveland when I lived in Cleveland, and we had about 10 to 12 people. That was cool. And then I moved it to Akron because I moved to Akron. And I could not get the Cleveland people to drive 40 minutes south. And I promoted it. But it is something where you get out of it what you put into it. And I did not have the time to plan. I was often just pulling something out of my butt. And you get out of it what you put into it. That was podcaster happy hours. And I opened it to everybody. But in the end, if you don't have the time to do it right, and that's why I quit doing it. I was like, well, this sucks. This is not good. And I was like, I'm putting my name on this. And I was like, because it was cool because Randy would come. But it was, I had maybe 5 people. And I tried to get companies to come and do demos. And I had somebody signed up and then they kind of bailed at the last minute. It was just one of those where I'm like, and it's not a bad idea. You just need somebody who's not running a website and 5 podcasts and, all that fun stuff. I just had too much stuff going. And I'm like, if I can't do it right, I'm not going to do it. So I might bring...
you got to have some bandwidth. Like you have to have some extra bandwidth. If you're already going 100% or 110%, don't start meetups. Don't do things locally. Like if you don't have the time, these things are a giant time suck. And they get once, like the first one will be fun. It's the second one that's the hardest. Like you get through the first one and you're like, man, that was great. We should do this again. And then you look back and you're like, that was a ton of work that nobody paid me for. And you start, you're like, I don't know if I want to do that again. And then, of course, you always get those unappreciating. There we go. The folks who don't appreciate the work that you do, that give you the feedback like, well, it would have been better if I couldn't hear the speakers or, and I had to sit too long. You're like, you came for free or whatever, right?
Yeah.
From that standpoint. I boot those people.
I just remembered we got a question from Ralph, and we will get to that right after we say thank you to our awesome supporters. You can be an awesome supporter by going to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. And also, I always like to remind you that this show is brought to you by the schoolofpodcasting.com, where you get step-by-step courses. You've got an amazing community and unlimited coaching. I was doing a lot of coaching. I use an app where people can send me text, video, audio, or screen share. And so I was still coaching from the floor of Podcast Movement. Use the coupon code COACH when you sign up. And there we go. If you go to Ask the Podcast Coach, we're using Podpage. If you want to try Podpage, go over to trypodpage.com and start your 14-day free trial. And if you need more Jim Collison, and who doesn't, go over. I'm not going to switch screens. I can't do it. I'm sorry.
Come on, Dave. I have to wave. Just pretend I'm waving.
There we go.
There we go.
It's like, wait, I got to find the right button. Go check him out at theaverageguy.tv and his great show, Home Gadget Geeks. And it's time for the Wheel o' Names, which when I do that, we go to here. Who will it be? Will it be castahead.net? Will it be John Muntz? Will it be our buddy Ralph over at Financially Confident Christian or the Indian Drop-In Network? Well, we're going to find out when we hit spin. And survey says, is it Craig or is it going to be Glenn? It's going to be Craig. AI goes to college. If you're a fan of AI and you're a teacher of some sort, you might want to check out AI Goes to College, where they are trying to answer the question, hey, should we just teach kids how to use AI and so they can use it better, or how are we going to stop them from, having AI do all their homework? And Craig is very knowledgeable when it comes to AI stuff. So check it out. AI Goes to College. And meanwhile, back at this, again, if you'd like to support the show, because there are lots of people over there doing it. It doesn't have to be $20 to get on the Wheel of Names. You can be like the flamealivepod.com or I Am Salt Lake podcast, who just celebrated 13 years. You can go say hi to Ed at soniccupcake.com. They're all there at askthepodcastcoach.com/support. But if you thought about it, you're like, you know what? They saved me time and they saved me money. Maybe we saved you some headaches, or we keep you educated. Just go to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome and become an awesome supporter today. And yeah, I Ralph threw this up a bit ago, and I was like, oh, I'll get to that in a second. And it dawned on me I had not gotten to this. And this is Ralph from the Financially Confident Christian Show. I'm hiring a new admin assistant, and I want her to help me with my shows. What would you recommend for a training routine I could share with her to bring up her speed with best practices? I, too, am hiring an assistant because I still have shows on Libsyn. I have a bunch of just weird little stuff. And it's one of the first times somebody spammed me, and I was like, hey, I could actually use your stuff. And so what I'm going to do is just make a Loom video and go, this is what I want you to do. Here's step one. Click here, log in via my 1Password, where you can share stuff without actually sharing stuff. And then go to this. I'm going to need you to copy this and then log in over here, blah, 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 and paste. I would just make a Loom video. And then Loom, I believe, transcribes it. So you could take the transcript, throw that into ChatGPT and go make this into a training manual. I know there are tools specifically designed to make like step-by-step training videos that you can then give to people, but that's how I would do it. Just show them how to do it, then go, now, do that 99 more times. And Jim, any insights on how you would train an assistant?
Oh, I have nightmares about that, to be honest with you. I have opportunities at work to have one, and I'm like, nah, I'm good. I don't want anybody screwing with my calendar.
My stuff, yeah.
Or it's a problem. I have a problem with it. I could be better at it. Oftentimes, I'll just say, nah, it's just easier for me to do it. I don't want to have to explain it to somebody and have to walk them through it. And then they won't do it the way I want them to do it, and some of those kinds of things. It's a problem. I would have a hard time letting someone else do it. So good on you, Ralph, if you can actually get it done and pass some of those things off and then pay for them.
Yeah, Stephanie asked, can you do this in Canva? Canva does do video. It's talk about something that does everything.
Yeah,
like
I was just going to say that. Yeah,
like their video is okay. It'll work. So that will be that's something you could do. Also, Dan had asked, does Resound work with video yet? Not that I know of. It's still audio. And I think that's all the questions from the chat room. We did have, let me jump over here. Somebody had asked this question on Reddit, and they said, has anyone used a rental podcast studio before? I have to do more research, but they're kind of popping up all over and seem pretty affordable. I guess affordable is in the eye of the beholder. So far, I've done my episodes remote, but I have some local interviewees coming up, and I thought it'd be cool to use one of these things. I guess in that case, yeah. Of course, I'm also not making any money at this point either. From what I can tell, you get a cool studio feel. You get a cool studio feeling setting to record and film in, and I think some of the offer audio, video editing equipment and support. Does anyone have any experience with these or using one of these places? Did you use it just for location and bring your own stuff, or did you get all the bells and whistles? What was your experience? How much did it cost? Et cetera, et cetera. Was it worth the content? And if you're in the East Bay area, any recommend? So they're on the West Coast. And so I have seen people do this. I know people that have tried this in terms of the podcaster that wants to open up and have kind of a studio. And they're charging anywhere. Usually they do the editing. And so you're looking at anywhere from $100 to $200 per episode. And that's where most people go, oh, or I could just have the person come over and we could record this on the kitchen table. And then you use something like Auphonic. I see them talk about Auphonic in the chat room. It's a lot of money, for that. And the only people I've seen try to run one of those that worked is they did it in a downtown of a big city where companies that didn't want to set up a room for a studio, they didn't want to invest in the equipment, and they could just kind of write off some of the money as the marketing budget. They, and I've seen them do that. So, yeah. And then Rich says, yeah, I got a studio right here in Walmart. Yeah, if you're in Franklin, Tennessee, just go to the Walmart. I think theirs were $60 an hour, but I don't think they were doing any editing. So it's an interesting thing, but I think most people, there you go. David says Mike Wilkerson, friend of the show, has a studio in St. Louis. He's been here a number of times. He's very good. Yeah. Mike has a whole network of shows that he runs. I need to have Mike back on the School of Podcasting. It dawned on me when I was at Podcast Movement, we kind of get stuck on what new stuff can I talk about? And like who is Rue? Lou Mangello has so many because of my podcast stories. And he does WDW radio. Like he just got back from Germany where they launched the latest Disney cruise. He got to go into where they do all the creation stuff, like the inner circle of Disney. He got to not only go in, but film it. And I was like, that's amazing. And so that's something that dawned on me. I'm like, sometimes if you're struggling for content and you had a really good guest, maybe have them come back on the show. I realize Effie Parks does a show called Once Upon a Gene, and talk about a niche. It's a niche about parents who have children with extremely rare disease, hence Once Upon a Gene. And what's weird is I met somebody at Podcast Movement, and I went over to her website, and she has a video on the front, and she explains how her son was born with this rare genetic disease. And I instantly was like, oh, you need to go see my buddy Effie. And I went over there, and the last time I'd seen her show, she had won her first award. Well, now she's got multiple awards. She's on Megaphone, and usually you're not on Megaphone unless you're Dan, right? You're running a really good show with lots of audience, and you want to throw in some ads. And I was like, that's interesting. And so if you are struggling for content and you do interviews, Jim, you have people back all the time, right?
Oh, regulars. It's money. Like I don't know why people don't do it more often. There's this idea, oh, I had you as a guest and now I can never have you again. And I'm like, if they're good,
right.
Even Johnny Carson would invite the comedians, if you were good, you got invited over to the couch, right?
Right.
Come sit with me. Or was that Letterman? Maybe it's both.
No, it was Johnny. That was the whole thing. If he gave you the okay and you didn't get asked over, you were a pariah. You're done. But if he was like, come on over to the couch, and it was weird because sometimes just coming over to the couch, they go, that was really good stuff. Really, that was funny stuff. And then they'd go to a commercial. But the fact that you were asked to go to the couch was kind of the signal that Johnny has given you. And the next day, that's back when there were 4 channels. The next day, you'd walk down the street and your life had changed. So, yeah.
Yeah, I have about 15 reoccurring hosts that come on Home Gadget Geeks. It's a ton easier. You get invited back if you have a good microphone. Like, it makes it super easy. They know the expectations. They know why they're coming. And I have a great relationship with them all, So I absolutely, Uncle Marv, who's in chat, he's one of them.
Yeah.
He comes on, a couple times a year, and it's great. I mean, and they're good friends. So why wouldn't you? If you're stuck in that rut of like, oh, I can only have a guest on once, stop it. Don't
Yeah.
if they're good, have them back often.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you? Yeah. I
Stop
think
it.
Glenn's been back on the School of Podcasting like 5 times, I think.
Yeah.
And he's got a thing now. He doesn't even really have to ask. He'll just like, hey, I got a thing. And I'm like, okay, here's the scheduling. I don't even ask him. I'm like, because he knows who my audience is. He knows what I'm trying to do. And so if you're going to give me a strategy to help grow my show, or you have some sort of because of my podcast story that will bring on, or your gear or whatever, I'm like, there are certain things I talk about. And then, Dan says, I love having guests back on. Yeah. And Jive says, reoccurring guests are better than, you don't have to, get like Ralph was talking about ramping up a new person. Well, if it's a guest that's already been on the show, they already know what to expect, who the audience is, that whole 9 yards. So keep that in mind.
Sure.
Saw this question talking about podcasting frequency. They said, I've been baffled. Wow, I can't read or talk today. I've waffled between posting bi-weekly to posting monthly. My episodes are much better when I post monthly because I have more time for post-production. I'd love to know what they do there. They say, but I fear not posting as frequent is one of the reasons I don't have as many listeners. I've tried doing mini episodes to bridge the gap. Have you had any success on a monthly basis? Monthly would be, the more you post good content, the quicker you're going to grow. Monthly is tough. I listen to a few shows that are bi-weekly, but I'm pretty sure monthly they have forgotten about you. Like I listen to the feed. I'm trying to think of some other ones that are bi-weekly. But on the other hand, so I would love to know, what are you doing that makes the post-production, because that's 2 weeks. But if you got a really busy life, I always say, do your episode, and then, if it took you 20 hours, okay, do you have 20 hours a week? No. Do you have 20 hours every 2 weeks? No. Well, then guess what? You're doing monthly, or you're going to make the show shorter, one of the two. But I would rather get a really good show on time than a show that was, every other week. I look at Dan Carlin. Dan Carlin does like 4 shows a year, more or less. They're 4 hours long, and he releases them when they're done. Now he is
but they're good.
But they're really good.
If they were garbage, no, he would have stopped already.
Right.
They're good. People love them. You can listen. I think when you're good, you do whatever you want. Like I just don't. Right. I just don't think schedules matter when you're good. People will start missing you. I have some friends that do a podcast, a tech podcast, and they've had, both of them have had busy things going on. It's just a season. They're going up monthly at this point, and it still shows up. They're good. So it shows up on my podcast player, and I'm like, oh, they're back. And I hit play and I listen to it. Right. If you're weekly and you go monthly and you lose half your subscribers, you should check your content. Like that's a really good indicator. Like, oh, okay, I've got some improving to do. Right. So if you're good, I don't think it's detrimental if you're, and when I say good, I mean, you're meeting your audience expectation. That's why they listen. They're coming to you because they enjoy you. Good doesn't mean tens of thousands. It can be that way. It means you have a really engaged audience, and they'll wait for you.
Well, Ray at the beginning of the show, Ray Arnott from Around the Layout, does a show about model trains. His audience is insanely engaged. Like nobody, sure. It's crazy. Dan says, I'm not sure I could tell you the schedule for any of the podcasts I listen to. There's a new episode in my podcast app. Oh, I guess I'll listen to it.
listen.
Yeah, that's me. There's only one I listen to, and I expect it to be there on Friday, and that's Podcasting 2.0. Because I go to Walmart and do grocery shopping, and I listen to Podcasting 2.0. So when there's not a new episode, I'm like, what? Stephanie says, weekly's really hard. I would love tips to make that easier. Always, shorter, and always be looking for content. Jody says, I split my hour-long interview into 2 30-minute episodes. Yeah, Jody Krangle's show. Yeah, and so for me, I'm always looking for content. Like if I'm watching a TV show, when it's over, I'm like, anything there for a podcaster? Nope. But if I watch something, or like Taylor Swift, we talked about it last week, I'm like, oh, that's a great example of how to use a short. All right, that goes in my note joy. I'm always when I'm at Podcast Movement, I'm like, oh, okay, that's, sometimes podcasting is therapy. There's a woman I met that's had a horrendous life. Just anything that can happen bad to women has happened to her. And she was able to pull herself around, and she now wants to talk about her story. And I was like, you should do that just for the therapeutic aspect of getting it out there,
Sure.
So, for me, I have note joy, and I have done it enough to where I never do. If I have a thing in my head that says you should write that down, I do not argue. I write it down, because the whole like, oh, I'll remember this later. This is a great idea. How could you forget this great idea until later? You're like, wait, was it? And then it dawns on you that you forgot the great idea. So always write it down. And it doesn't have to be Note Joy. It could be Apple Notes, could be pad and pencil, whatever you're doing. But for me, there are times when I'm like, ooh, what am I going to talk about? I'll give you an example. This morning, I was making breakfast, and I thought, ooh, that might be a potential. I'm remembering now. It was overwhelm. But I didn't write it down, and I almost forgot it, because a lot of people at Podcast Movement, and really this is any event, when you learn for 3 days straight, your brain's going to be like, okay, like it's enough. And I thought the next episode of the School of Podcasting might be called Now What? And just like, okay, I've got all the okay, now what? Like, well, okay, pick one thing and do it. Don't try to do all 15 at one time. Pick the next thing. What's the next thing you're going to do to improve your show? Okay, do that. Test it for a few weeks and see if it moves the needle, and go from there. Let's see. If you got questions, now's the time, because we got about 8 minutes left. I wanted to share this. I think I talked about this last week, but if not, it's worth repeating. I did a presentation on different ways to make money, and this one gets overlooked. Did we talk about Mark Maron last week?
We did. Yes, we did.
Yeah, it was selling your back catalog. If you're using Buzzsprout or Captivate, they make this really easy, where you can just go into your episodes and say, this is now premium. And Mark Maron was making $215,000 a month with his back catalog. Now, normally, and his stuff is fairly evergreen, so you can do that. So what was that? Thule is TUULIE.com, I believe. And that is AI tools a la carte versus it's the direct opposite of what we're talking about, where everybody else is like, for one low price, you get everything and it's mediocre. Then you have Thule, where it's like, oh, what do you need? Oh, you just need, AI image generation. Here you go, for whatever it is. I'm going to guess $7 a month or whatever it is. Also, another way, John Jamango says, Twitter bookmarks are a great way to book things. If you're using Captivate and you see a website or something, you can add a extension in Captivate and say, remember this link, and you can add notes about it. And then when you do your episode, you're like, oh, add this link, that link, this link, and this link to that episode. And that's a fun time saver and organizer as well. David says, if you start monthly, maybe down the road, you'll be able to slowly move it to 3 weeks or less as you go. But being consistent is really what stands out. Yeah.
Yeah, there may not be enough content for weekly.
Yeah, that's true.
In some cases, for some people, you're like, is there really enough changing? Sometimes this happens in spaces where it gets real popular really fast, or it's just real popular for a while. And then it kind of, like podcasting is kind of this way for us. Like we have to be very creative about the topics we're talking about, because there's just not a lot of things or changes going on in the podcast space.
Yeah.
And so, we kind of have to get super creative and dig in other areas to make sure we have content for the show. So you might be in a space that was real popular for a while, but then now there's just like, if you're making up stuff to talk about, maybe every other week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking of other topics.
And now, he's been waiting for this. It's time for Jim to get his nerd on.
Jim, you've been playing with new toys?
I'm always encouraged by the kids that say yay at the end. It just makes me happy. just to hear those kids go yay. Yeah, just maybe as we wrap it up today, a little some tech gadgetry that's going on. I've been working on seeing if I can replace all the power that I use in the studio. About 500 watts is what I constantly kind of run at. Now, that's not just podcasting. I have some cryptocurrency stuff going, and about 500 watts. And so I worked on buying some solar panels. One, I wanted to teach myself, like, what's this world of solar? I hear about this all the time. Solar, the credits for solar power are going to end here at the end of the year, at least for now. And you're like, okay, what's this all about? So rather than just talking about it, I wanted to actually do it. So I bought a couple solar panels, and then I plugged them into, I have a Blue Eddy AC 180 that I use as the UPS. That's the power supply. That's in case the power goes down. I use that as my UPS device, and it's worked great. But when I brought the solar in, it didn't work great with the solar because it wouldn't charge. It didn't have solar priority built into the MPPT controller. So it was either grid or solar, and then it's Bluetooth only. So I could only use it on my phone, and I wanted it to work with Home Assistant, and it wouldn't work that way. So I recently purchased an EcoFlow. They're also a big player in that space, an EcoFlow Delta 3, 1,024 watt-hour battery. Again, I'm going to use it as a UPS device, has the same functionality of it. But it does have, they're saying, I got to test it. I just got it yesterday. So it just came in, ordered it, it came in yesterday. So I'll be working on it this weekend. But it does say it has solar priority. Well, I'm gonna give it a test. I'm going to give it a try. We're going to see if I can bring the solar power in and use the solar power live to power the devices, as well as it being kind of attached to the grid. These devices, listen, if you are in the space of thinking about backing up your equipment, this area, and just because it's a solar generator, sometimes they call them, doesn't mean you have to use solar. I think for most people, for a couple $100, probably $300, they're a little more expensive than a lead acid battery UPS, but those things are junk now. So don't buy those things. Don't buy APC. Don't buy those things. They're kind of junk. The new era, and I think we're also in an era where all this solar stuff, because the credits are ending, less people are going to buy them, which means there'll be a lot of stock. And what happens when there's a lot of stock and not a lot of demand?
Yeah, that's right.
Right? Prices go down. So you may want to keep your eye. I wouldn't say go out and buy it today, but you might want to keep your eye. EcoFlow is a great one. I've liked the Blue Eddy. A little bit of limitations on that. Jackery is another one that's in that space. I don't review them on my show, like formal reviews, because there's plenty of reviews on YouTube for those things. So I just let the guys that are good at it do it. But maybe your studio needs a good backup solution. So if the power goes down, I just had another limb fall off of my tree last night, and it's still laying on the power thing right now. Now I own a generator, so that guaranteed that power line is never going to go down. So it's holding fast because I have a battery, right? And I have a generator. That's why it's still, any other human, it would have ripped that power right out of the wall, and we'd be powerless at the moment. But if you're thinking about doing that, I think now is the time, look at a few batteries, put a few in your Amazon or Walmart or whatever you use, the app that you use to track things. And you might see some really good pricing between now and the end of the year, or first part of the year. Those incentives here in the United States end at the end of this year. we may have a glut in the space, and the pricing may be good. I don't do reviews, but if you want to talk about it, you can always email me, jim@theaverageguy.tv, and I'd love to talk to you about it. If I'm doing less reviews and more one-on-one stuff. So if you want to talk about the chat, shoot me an email.
Yeah, I was getting worried. Dan says a Blue Yeti to power the Blue Yeti.
Yeah, there you go. I like it. Yes.
Way too much.
I don't have a Blue Yeti anymore. Say that 10 times fast.
Exactly.
The Blue Yeti. Yeah, those can Blue Yeti, and he spelled those correctly. The Blue Yeti one is hard to put. Yes, for sure.
Nice. Well, what's coming up on Home Gadget Geeks?
Yeah, we're kind of back at it, and as I'm looking at this, Jay Franzi joins me from jfranzi.com. Jay just wrote a book, which Jay's been on the show here. We've talked to him before.
Yeah,
but he wrote a book about doing production in Nashville. Right, he's a Nashville guy. So, anyways, he comes on. He's looking to upgrade to a Mac, so we talked about that. An upgrade, more detailed upgrade on my solar stuff. If you want more information on that, posted right now, homegadgetgeeks.com.
And yeah, on the School of Podcasting, as I was sitting here, I'm like, oh yeah, that was the idea. So I'm going to do a show, like what to do when you get home from an event. I spent a lot of day yesterday following up with all the people that I wanted to follow up with, because you think you are, and then, you got the big stack of business guys, like just one thing at a time. Mr. Jive says, Jay Franzi is a lovely dude. There you go.
He is a lovely guy. He's a great friend. Another one I have on the show very often.
Yeah. And Dan says, another fantastic show, guys. Thanks. Yeah. I thought of Dan last night. I watched a show on Netflix. It was like Mr. So-and-so's War. It was a congressman that ended up funding a war, Charlie Wilson's War. And it started off with, based on a true story. And instantly I was like, it's a Dan thing. So he owns that phrase now.
He does. In our minds, anyways. He owns it in our mind. That's the power of advertising, right? And so
next week I'll be back from the Content Creator Expo. So we'll be here next Saturday. AskThePodcastCoach.com/live. We'll see you.